Hi, my name is Laine Crosby, and I'm not only the co-host for Ghost Talkers, but I'm a producer for the show as well. When we taped this episode in our studios at the Ghost of Gettysburg headquarters, there were no problems with the equipment we used, and there were only 3 people present with no background noise. However, when this podcast was edited, we found something very strange. Throughout the episode, there is static that is common with electronic voice phenomenon, or the capturing of spirit voices on audio equipment. Throughout the show, voices are heard, some in the background, some talking over what we are saying. When I asked Rob about casting out demons, we hear a strange noise and static. We decided not to edit out these unexplained noises. After all, this is a talk show about the paranormal. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
Now, welcome back to the show.
Welcome to the Ghost Talkers podcast, the show dedicated to unsolved history and paranormal mystery. Each week, we delve into something new, from true ghost stories to conversations with psychics, authors, historians, and the dead. If you're scared right now, it's probably because you just listened to Ghost Talkers podcast. I'm investigative medium Laine Crosby, here with my co-host, Ghost of Gettysburg author Mark Nesbitt, and you're listening to Ghost Talkers on ghosttalkers.net. I am so excited that we have your old friend here today, Rob Conover.
Yeah, it's great to see him again.
It really is. Thank you, Rob.
It's good to be here.
We have a very unusual show for our audience today. Rob is a renowned spirit guide and psychic counselor who has been seen on just about every cable network and national television, national radio, and even international radio shows as well. And I know I have seen you on television casting out demons, taking on demons, but that's one of the many things you do, and I want to talk about that today. But first, our audience can watch you on the second episode of the new season of A Haunting on the Discovery Channel and read your book entitled Dealing with Ghosts, which is being edited right now and should be in stores very soon. Rob, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what is it exactly that you do?
Well, first of all, I'm a little different than most people. Some people call this a gift. It's not really, I don't really look at it that way. I was kind of the reluctant astronaut. I was a private detective for a lot of years and didn't believe in ghosts or psychics or demons or anything like that. And through a series of events that took place, I wound up in a haunted healthcare center in my hometown of Pekin, Illinois. And throughout the events of that night, things I caught on tape, things that happened to me, by the next morning, reviewing some videotape I had taken, I started thinking maybe there is such a thing as ghosts and things like that. And then the next thing that happened was I had a accident and my finger was pulled from my hand. And after that incident, I started having dreams and for some reason could tell when somebody was at my door before they knocked and somebody was calling me before the phone rang, and very scary. It scared me a lot, and I didn't want anything to do with it. And I think the thing that changed my mind about not having anything to do with it was when a woman came to me and I told her she needed to go see a doctor, and they found that she was in the precancer stages of ovarian cancer and were able to stop it because they got to it soon enough. And I thought, if I can help people with this, then it can't be bad. Oh, wow, and yeah. I do believe that God is the one that decided to let me have this ability. And so I use it as often as I can to help people that think they have a ghost in their house call me. I've even been called by businesses who have ghosts in their business. And my job is to help this spirit find its way to the other side through the light. And in doing so, I help a spirit find its way home, and I give a home back to the people that call me.
I don't think there is any scarier situation than what you've dealt with. I mean, the scariest places on earth seem to be where you are because of the demons that you've dealt with. Can you tell us what a demon is? I mean, you've seen them firsthand, I know, and I'd like to...
Well, I don't really refer to them as demons. I refer to them as devil's angels. And I believe they're sent here to affect and bother people that are going through very deep emotional problems that could go either way, and they're here to push them to the dark side. Or I believe that people that mess around with black magic, who draw pentagrams and try to draw things in, think they're doing something that's just fun and as a joke, and in reality sometimes do bring in something that's dark and evil. And that's where I think they come from.
Now, I know Mark has seen the video of you being, I guess, I don't know if you were levitated, but you were certainly thrown across the room into a wall by something unseen.
I was actually knocked into a door, and that was the first time I'd had any demon or devil's angel, whatever you want to call it, actually physically attack me. And it just happened to be caught on video. But the other thing that was caught on video was my protection. There were beautiful blue lights surrounding me, trying to help me. And I looked at this as angels that were called upon. And but my faith never faltered, and when I was pushed back, I still went forward and got rid of the demon.
Right.
That's fascinating, where there's actually a contest for territory, it seems.
Well, the difference between dealing with this one compared to the others was there was a pentagram drawn on the wall in this room that he had came out of. It was like a portal for him. And a young lady that was with me, who is a doctor by trade and believes in her Indian spirituality, had actually closed that portal. And he was trying to get to it through me, and I wouldn't let him. And that's where the physical contact came in.
Okay.
That was his only way of escape, and he couldn't get by me.
Some people wonder if ghosts or devil's angels or what have you can actually touch us or physically push us, and I guess that's kind of
now when we're dealing with just spirits of normal people, I find that a lot of normal people that pass away have guilt. I think guilt is one of the main things that keeps a spirit here on earth. Something they've done in their life that they fear God is going to frown on. They don't want to pass over. They're afraid he's going to send them to hell because of this one thing. And those people I deal with in a spiritual way, talking to them about God being a merciful, loving, forgiving God. And if they show faith in him by going through that light, he'll show them his love and mercy. But when you're dealing with the dark side, that's a totally different subject. And I don't want people to think that the only thing that's out there is demons and darkness. It's not. We have average normal people that pass away that have something deep inside of them. Sometimes it's the guilt of something they've done. Sometimes it's something they want to tell someone before they leave, or something they feel they need to finish before they go. Or in some cases they have led an evil life and they think, I'm definitely going to hell if I go through this light.
Right.
So each one of them is different, and each case out of the 600 I've done over the years, each case has been different in one way or another. But it always comes down to, will they go through the light? And I'm happy to say that so far God and I have never failed. I've always been able to help the spirit through the light.
Great.
How do you tell the difference between a ghost and a demon?
A ghost, a spirit will do things to let you know they're there. They'll move things, they'll bump things, they'll knock your bed in the night, they'll wake you up in the middle of the night. And when a spirit wakes you up in the middle of the night, you're wide awake. You're not half in and half out of sleep, you're wide awake. They just do things to let you know they're there. Sometimes they do things to let you know they're upset. I notice in all these years that some spirits become attached to kids. And if mom and dad get upset with the child and punish them, and the spirit doesn't think they should have been punished, they come out strong and let you know they're there. Or renovation. If you start tearing down a wall or putting in windows or whatever, they don't like change, and they'll come out, and they come out strong. Any kind of emotional upset, any kind of renovation. But when you're talking about a demon or devil's angel, they're there for a totally different reason, and none of it is good.
Right.
And they're not going to heaven. They're going back to where they came from.
How do you deal with these entities?
I firmly believe in God, and my faith in him is what gives me the strength to deal with these things, and I do it with my Bible, and I do it in his name. And no matter how aggressive they get, I try to be more aggressive in his name.
So if I were a demon, what would be the first thing you would say to me?
Why am I doing your radio show? No. I would tell you that it was time for you to leave, that you don't belong here, and that I would tell you in no uncertain terms that you were going to leave, and you were going to leave in the name of God. And like the incident we were talking about earlier, in that incident, he was going to get by me one way or the other, but he didn't. And that's the first and only time I've ever been physically attacked.
Now, if I were to hide, do you often have demons hide?
I've had them hide, but I always find them.
What would you say to them?
I would, first of all, make them mad, and I would call them a coward, and I would work on that until they lose their temper and finally come out.
I heard that one program that you were, watched that one program you were on TV, and it was apparently a woman and a little girl, and you just got mad, and you said, "You coward, you're picking on the little girl and a woman. Come pick on somebody your own size." I remember that. That was very
That's how you have to do it
impressive.
sometimes, and that usually brings them out, and that's when they lose.
Let me ask you about, because this is on, I'm sure, on people's minds right now. We all admit that there are times when you need protection. How do you protect yourself? What do you put in your mind?
I don't really do anything special. I do meditation sometimes to clear my mind, but as far as protection is concerned, my belief is that God chose me to do this, so God is my protector. Mm-hmm. And my faith in him is what gives me the strength to do what I do. And I always know he's with me, so I don't worry about it. He'll take care of it.
Do you ever, at the end of any of these sessions, how do you feel physically? Are you tired?
Oh, I'm exhausted.
That's what I thought.
I usually have Tylenol and water beside my bed, because the next morning when I wake up, I usually have a head. Physically and emotionally drains you.
That is interesting, though, too, that your lack of doubt is your protection, your belief in God. And you're really owning that.
And in my line of work, I can't doubt that. I have to know he's there protecting me.
You know, one of the, I'd heard a psychic talk about the different reasons why spirits linger in one place, and she rattled off several of them, and one of them, though, that she kind of said reluctantly was fear of judgment. Here at Gettysburg, you know, that we have that. The soldiers was a very Christian type of, and there were a lot of revivals at the time of the Civil War. They knew they were committing a mortal sin, thou shalt not kill, when they were fighting each other. So it's interesting to hear Rob talk about fear of judgment.
Yeah.
If I had to talk to those soldiers, I'd also have to quote some parts of the Bible that deal with Jericho and the wall and the fights between good and evil that took place, that God was also on their side. Mm-hmm. You know, and if you believe in what you're doing and you're fighting to protect something that you love, I don't believe God's going to hold that against you.
I heard you say that the other night at the railroad engine house.
Now, here's another thing that a lot of people give me grief about. But I also believe people that commit suicide and they stay here because they've been told all their life, if you commit suicide, you're going straight to hell. But I think when a person gets to the point where they can actually take their own life, they are mentally ill, mentally sick. And the way I deal with these spirits is I explain to them that God will not condemn you for being sick. And when you take your own life, you are mentally sick. And if you go through that life, God is not going to condemn you for that. It would be like God condemning someone for having cancer and dying. He wouldn't do that.
I have had more than one ghost of a soldier on the battlefield here in Gettysburg tell me, if you only knew what I did today, then you wouldn't tell me that I could go to heaven, that I could go through that light. God won't take me.
It was funny. I had a preacher the other night who wouldn't cross over because he felt what he had done during the Battle of Gettysburg would keep him from entering heaven.
Really? Was it here at the Ghost of Gettysburg headquarters?
It was at the
Railroad
house.
Oh.
Yeah. And he repeated most of what I said back to me. And I believe Mark got some EVP.
We got some of that on EVP too. You were talking about heaven, and we got a very distinct voice say heaven. I mean, it was Class A EVP, and then something else Rob said. He kind of repeated as if he were looking for validation. Are you sure?
He was trying to make his mind up to believe me.
Yeah. Can we play that EVP?
You're almost here. You might as well come the rest of the way around.
Wow, that is great.
That was fascinating, wasn't it?
Yeah, let's listen to that again.
I told you it was good.
Yes, he clearly says heaven. Please hang on. We will be right back after this message from our sponsor.
Historians say the Battle of Gettysburg ended on July 3rd, 1863. However, historian Mark Nesbitt, author and paranormal investigator, says, "I don't think so. You be the judge." Experience the ghostly side of Gettysburg with Mark Nesbitt's Ghosts of Gettysburg candlelight walking tours. Visit ghostsofgettysburg.com for tour schedules and event information.
Now, welcome back to the show.
So, Rob, can you tell us about your very first experience with a demon?
Yeah, no, I can tell you that I was totally unprepared for it, not really knowing what I was going to be dealing with. It was a woman in Antioch, Tennessee. She called me because a friend of mine, Troy Taylor, had told her to call me because she was looking for some help. What happened was at the age of 48, she decided that she was going to change her life. She had lived a very risque life, drugs, drinking, sex, everything. And at the age of 48, she sat down in her bedroom one night and said, "God, I'm going to find you. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to find the church that I like. I'm going to join it, and I'm going to live for you now and nothing else." And trouble started the very next night. She lived in a very nice condominium, brand new. She was the only one that ever lived there. I'll tell you the inside so that you can understand the story. You walk in the front door and it's a cathedral ceiling, and to the right are windows at the top of the ceiling. On the left-hand side is a wall, and at the top is a window that looks out from her bedroom over her living room, and it has shutters on it. And the back is the kitchen, then there's a spiral staircase you go up, and the first door is into the bathroom, and then there's a hallway that goes back to her bedroom. Halfway down is a door that goes into the bathroom. Across from it's a door that goes into a walk-in closet. So anyway, she wakes up in the middle of the night, the very next night after she told God this, and all of the furniture in her room, and she had a very plush bedroom with table and chairs and lights and lamps, and all of the furniture was stacked up around her bed. She had to work her way out of the bed. Now, she had a 25-year-old son that stayed gone a lot, and so she thought he had done it. So she went to his room to yell at him, and he hadn't been home. And the next night, she was awakened by something clawing at her face, pulling her hair, tugging the covers off. It scared her so bad that she started sleeping downstairs on a couch. And even down there, she was bothered. And the only reason she moved down there, it was closer to the front door in case she had to run away. And this went on forever. She was getting like 2 and 3 hours of sleep a night, not enough. And she couldn't find help. She did go to a lady psychic in Nashville called Psychic to the Network Stars. This lady came over with an entourage. They stayed downstairs. She walked through the house, comes back downstairs and says, "There's something very evil here. You should move." And then they left and charged her a great amount of money for that little visit. And finally she got on the internet. She found Troy Taylor, and Troy, being a good friend of mine, told her to call me and that if there was something there, I could get rid of it. And so I drove to Antioch, Tennessee. I got there about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. A lady met me, very nice lady. We talked for a while. And I always get hyper when I'm doing a case, so I just told her, "Go ahead and go to bed on the couch, and I'll stay up and see what's bothering you." And she had purchased a little puppy, a little Cocker Spaniel puppy to keep her company, which followed me around and nibbled at my ankles all night. But I sat on the couch opposite her, and she went to sleep. We were in the dark. I felt nothing. I walked all through the house. I went upstairs through all the rooms. Nothing. I even walked outside the house, the condo, and walked around it. I felt nothing. She woke up about 6 o'clock in the morning. She said, "That's the first time I've slept all night in months." And she goes, "What happened?" And I said, "Nothing." I said, "I felt nothing. I saw nothing." And she said, "Okay." She said, "I'm going to get ready for work and leave, and we'll talk when I get home." She said, "You can have the entire upstairs. You can use the shower, sleep in my bedroom because I don't sleep in there anymore." So she went to work. I went upstairs and took a shower, and I walked down the hallway to her bedroom, never forget. As I stepped into the bedroom, this energy come over me. It was so strong, I felt like it was going to pick me up in the air. I was standing with my right side to the hallway, looking in the bedroom, and I said out loud, "I can feel you. Now let me see you." And out of the corner of my right eye, I saw this black figure. It looked like a mannequin. There was no face, no genitalia, just jet black, shiny. It ran from the bathroom I just came out of across the hall into the walk-in closet. I walked down the hallway and I stepped into this closet. It was very dark. I could feel this energy, but I couldn't see it. And I had no idea what I was going to do because I'd never dealt with anything like this before. And this is where it gets really strange for me. A very soft, calm, quiet voice said, "Rob, this is where the battle will take place." And I immediately became very calm. And I went down to the bedroom and I went to sleep. She came home that night and I explained to her everything that had happened. And I told her, "We'll have to do this upstairs in your bedroom." I said, "Put on some comfortable clothes and get ready." And she goes, "What's going to happen?" And I said, "I don't know." But we went upstairs that night. The puppy stayed downstairs. She got in the middle of the bed, sitting cross-legged. I sat on the edge of the bed, facing down this hallway, and we were in the dark. And suddenly, there was this scratching. And it was on the sides of the house, the top, the bottom. It was all around us. And as I looked to the window that looked out over her bedroom that had the shutters on it, you could see dark shadows going past the slits in the shutters. That was a straight shot of about 15 feet down to the floor.
Was that inside the house?
Yes, inside the house. And she says, "What is that?" I said, "I don't know." And as I sat on the edge of this bed looking down this dark hallway, on the side of the wall from the shadows from the windows at the top of the room, the other room, a little light was shining on the hallway. You could see these long, dark fingers and arms like they were trying to pull themselves into the hallway. I really didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew I had to be there looking down that hallway between her and that hallway. And as we sat there, she became more and more upset about what was going on. And suddenly, at the end of the hallway in this dark doorway, boom, there's this young man. And he says, "Rob, come here, Rob, and I'll tell you what's going on." And from behind me, she says, "Mark, what are you doing here?" That's my son. But he totally ignored her. And he kept saying over and over, "Come here, Rob, and I'll tell you what's going on." And I knew I wasn't supposed to leave. And I said, "No, I'm not leaving this room." And just like he came, he was gone. I told her, I said, "That wasn't your son. I don't believe that was your son." And at this point, she's moving up closer to my back. She's a little more upset. And I had my Bible in my hand, and I said a few prayers because that's all I knew to do. And suddenly, in the same spot where the boy had appeared, about 4 foot off the ground, looking directly in my eyes, was this head of this green, ugly head with red eyes, ugly teeth, looking right at me. She grabbed my shirt. She was audibly crying at this point, saying, "What is that?" And the voice looked at me and said, "Rob, you can have the bitch too. We'll hold her for you." And I held up my Bible and I started praying, and she grabbed my shirt and was crying. And just like it came, it went away. And at this point, she says, "What is going on here?" And I said, "I have no idea. I just know it's not over yet." And a few minutes later, the puppy that was downstairs started screaming. Sounded like a woman screaming. And she said, "They're killing my dog." And she started to get up. And I said, "Don't move. We're not going downstairs. We're not moving." And within a few seconds, it quit. And I'm sure she was under the impression that the dog had died. This went on for a while. We sat there with me praying and her crying. I didn't know what was going to happen next. And then I heard this voice again. This calm, clear voice said, "If you can hold them off till midnight, the battle will be won." And And I looked at her, and thank God she heard it too. She said, "Who said that?" And I said, "I don't know, but I think they're on our side." And I had a watch on at the time that had an alarm on it. And I never set it, so it went off at noon and at midnight every day. And as we were sitting there, it went off. And I thought, that's it. The scratching stopped. I handed her my Bible. I said, "You stay here." And I started to go check it out. Before I left the room, I looked at my watch. It said 5 till midnight. So I went back, took the Bible, and sat back down and started praying again. And at midnight, this is hard for people to believe, and I completely understand that, trumpets blew. That was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. And everything went quiet. Everything was calm. I handed her my Bible. I walked downstairs. The dog was asleep on the couch. It wasn't harmed at all. I told her it was okay. She came downstairs. She goes, "Oh my God." She goes, "This doesn't even feel like my home. It's like someone opened the doors and windows and let fresh air in." And we sat down, and she said, "Now tell me why." And I said, "You were looking for faith. You were trying to find your faith in God." I said, "God could have sent an angel down here to handle this for you. But you were looking for faith. And what better way to show you faith than to send an average guy with nothing but a Bible to stand between you and them and win merely on his faith." And she never had any more trouble there. She lived there for 3 more years and then retired to Miami.
Wow.
That's great.
What an amazing story.
Is that story going to be in your book?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good.
It's going to be a great book.
I can't wait.
So whenever I had to deal with anything like that, after that I wasn't as intimidated as I was that night, because she kept saying why and what's causing this, and all I could say was, "I don't know."
Right.
She probably
Well,
got
that was your
tired of
first,
hearing
really your first experience?
it. Very first.
Wow.
Who do you think was the voice, the calm voice?
An angel
An angel of God.
letting me know that they were still there. Keep the faith. Hang in there. It's going to be okay.
Her son
It was an illusion by the dark side to get me to come out of that room. I think that was the whole thing, was if they could get me out of that room, they could come into that room.
They could have her back again.
When you live for the dark side as long as she did, and then suddenly decide you're going to go and live for God, they're not going to let you go that easy.
Well, I always like to, I love stories that come from policemen. They are very aware of detail and for the most part are trustworthy and can tell you the story that you know, because you're always watching for how the story has played out, and you try and get as much detail as you can. So I always like those stories from law enforcement.
Well, any kind of investigation that I do, it first starts out with a detective's point of view, because I investigate before I bail in and start saying you have a ghost. And because of a lot of these investigations, I found that there wasn't a ghost there. And I have to tell the person, no, your house is not haunted. And as much as they want to believe it, it's not haunted, then I have to go through and show them what's causing the noise or what's causing them to do this or that. And the strange thing is, certain people want to yell ghost or demon before they ever find out what the true problem is. And in a lot of cases, I've had to deal with emotionally upset children that the parent wants to believe they're possessed by a demon rather than believe they have a problem.
Yeah.
But in each of those cases, they're sitting down and talking with that person for a couple of hours and letting them relax with me and then tell me what their true problem is. And then I can tell that the parent what the problem is. And I leave them talking about the problem so they can settle it and take care of it.
Now, I saw you on, I don't know, it may have been the Discovery Channel. It was over a decade ago. And you went into a house where there had been an entire family murdered. And you cast out whatever evil was in that house. You probably do this so often.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember which one it was.
And I have to ask, when you go into places like that and there are murders, do you feel residual evil that's there?
You feel the emotions. You feel the emotional sadness and things like that took place during that awful time. Sometimes there is a spirit. of someone who was murdered in the house that stayed there. And you have to deal with them too.
Do you ever find anything that is evil that is keeping them there?
It's usually another spirit that's dominant. I've went into houses where there was a man, well, in one in particular in Wisconsin, there was a man, probably in his 30s, 40s, that was from I think it was 1901, and a 14-year-old girl who turned out to be his daughter from that same era. And the thing of it was, there was an incestuous relationship. So a family member found them engaged in that relationship and shot them both with a shotgun on the property that this house was built on. And through dealing with them, the man was keeping the daughter there because he didn't want to be alone. And I find that a lot. The person that's usually responsible for the deaths is afraid and doesn't want to be alone, so he dominates the lesser spirits and keeps them there. It's my job to separate them so that the spirits that want to leave can leave, and then all I have to do is deal with that person.
And how do you do that? How do you get the little girl to cross over without him keeping her there?
Probably for the same reason that you have me on this show, is because you trust me. You know,
Right.
I find that when I go into a person's house and they've never met me and they don't know what to expect when I walk through the door, I think they expect me to show up in a cab with a black suitcase and black clothes and a black hat, be standing there with smoke around me, you know.
But that's the way you are today.
But they open up the door and I'm like, "Hi, have you got any coffee?" You know, because I live on coffee. And then I sit down, and before it's over, in 5 minutes, they like me, I like them. They try. I've had them actually say, "Well, here's the keys to the house, we'll leave." And I say, "No, I want somebody to stay here with me," you know, because I don't want them to come back and find all the furniture gone. I say, "Well, he left, but he took everything he had." So, you know, it's all how they feel about me. And once I start talking with a spirit, it's the same. I have to get their confidence and their trust. And once they believe in me, and I tell them that if they go through that light, God's waiting for them, they'll go. And then when I have the one bad one left to deal with, I have to deal with them in a different way, because they know, they feel they are condemned to hell, you know. And I tell them things like, for instance, that man that had an incestuous relationship with his daughter. I said, you know, you've been here 100 years. You've been in prison for 100 years, a self-imposed purgatory. Now's the time for you to move on and step through that light, show your faith in God so he can show you his love and mercy and forgiveness. Because if you stay here, you have to remember this: the worst of God's judgment is still better than the best of the devil's. And if you stay here long enough, eventually the devil's going to get you. And they think about it a while. And I've had these very tough, mean men start sobbing and crying and asking me to pray for them as they go through the light.
Now, obviously, Rob is a very talkative guy and very easy to talk to. And but yesterday was his first experience on the Gettysburg Battlefield, and we went to 3 or 4 places, and you couldn't get a word out of him. And I would imagine he was just overwhelmed. Have you had a chance to think about that? Have you been able to decompress a little, Rob?
I was totally overwhelmed. By the time we got to the 4th or 5th place, I was burned out completely.
You just kind of shut down, yeah.
The amazing thing was, on the trip into town, we came through Chambersburg. And as we're coming into this town, suddenly I smell all this smoke. I see all this fire. These people are screaming and yelling, and gunshots, and men on horses, and kids screaming, and women yelling, and it's burning down. And I am not an expert on Gettysburg. I know nothing about it, as Mark can tell. And I'm telling the men in the car, let's get through here. This is awful. I mean, it was just draining me, the whole thing. And when we got to the hotel, Frank May, who had brought me here, said, "Look at this picture over here, Rob." And I look over this picture, and there's Chambersburg burning, you know, and all these people yelling and screaming. And
burned by the Confederates in 1864.
Yeah, it was,
yeah. That's something Rob didn't know. I mean, he didn't even know where he was going through.
I didn't know where I was at.
Yeah.
And then when we started at the battlefield, at first it was okay. I was dealing with it. I was telling Mark what I was seeing, what I was hearing, and as the day wore on, the next thing I knew, I can't do this. And then he took me to this little place, and I sat down on a rock, and I said, wow, this must be a great place. I don't feel anything. Then it dawned on me, you're burnt out. You can't feel anything.
It was the triangular field, which a lot of people feel. Someone earlier said it seemed more peaceful than normal, but I know what happened there, and it was not. It was any but peaceful. And yet, Rob just couldn't. I think it just got to the glass was absolutely full, and there was no more they could.
And after some rest, we wound up at another place where I was at the top of my game, ready to go, and helped a couple people. So.
Yeah.
So how many people? 50,000 people died within the span of...
51,000 casualties, which is killed, wounded, and missing in over 3 days. But you have to remember, almost 175,000 guys that fought here, that expended their emotions here, they're all dead now. Yeah. And who knows, they may
my son said, after last night, I'd helped 3 spirits cross over. My son said, wow, Dad, only 49,997 to go.
I've had days where, like the day we went out to the lady farm, I got in the car and I didn't think I was going to be able to drive home. I felt run over by a truck.
Well, when I do EVP, now I'm not sensitive at all, but when I do EVP, about an hour and a half, that's it. That's all I can do, and my energy's gone. And I'm not sensitive, so I can imagine what it must be like for you people.
It is. It's a very intense thing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I wasn't prepared for it. I had dealt with up to 7 or 8 spirits in the same room at the same time, and thought that was pretty intense. But when you come into Gettysburg and step out on one of these battlefields, you better be ready.
Yeah.
Because it's going to hit you all at once, and it's going to hit you hard.
We need to get you down to Fredericksburg, too. There's some pretty intense battlefields down there. I think I have a picture as a historian of what it must have been like, but you guys really know what it was like.
The amazing thing about dealing with spirits from different eras, I have to throw this in there because then I'll explain everything. I was called to do a house in Peoria, Illinois, and the house was built in like 1855, and it had the turret room, and it was just a beautiful old mansion, and the huge rooms with the sliding doors that divided them, giant dining room and all of this, everything hardwood. And this police officer friend of mine kept after me to take his daughter. She wanted to go so bad. She knows everything you've done. She's read everything about you. Will you testify? I said, okay. This is a 25-year-old girl, so I figured, she knows I'm going to a person's house. She's going to show up respectful. Well, it was summertime. She showed up in short shorts, a halter top, and tennis shoes. And thank God I was there first and explained to the people that this was a friend of mine's daughter. I hadn't met her yet. And she come walking in, with everything but gum in her mouth. And the people there were so intense about having me do this, and they did not want to be there. The wife was just scared to death. So they gave me the key and they left. And they said, we'll be back. And there were 2 spirits in the house. I'll never forget it. But the gentleman was dressed in the old attire with the riding pants down in the boots, the long tails, and, very sophisticated looking. And we were sitting in this living room area in the dark, and he started down these big, wide wooden steps and stopped and started attacking her, verbally calling her a Jezebel, a harlot, sitting there with no clothes on in front of this man, and was trying to get around me to get to her. He was really upset with her for being dressed that way, and she was petrified. She was clinging onto my arm with her large nails digging in very deep, and when I saw that he was trying to get around me, I just stood up and said, no, stop it. And when I did, he flashed this bright light that filled this hallway and stomped up the stairs. So I had to go up there after. And but he really took a look at her and immediately back to his way of thinking, this has to be a harlot or a Jezebel. He had no idea this is, 2000. This is the way they dress now.
Yeah.
And then when I dealt with him, I had to deal with this young girl, about 14 or 15, who was totally afraid of me, but not afraid of her, and was relating to her. So even though she was petrified, I stood her in front of me, I held onto her shoulders, and I said, you have to tell her this, and you have to tell her that, and get her to like you, and the conversation, and finally she got to where she was comfortable with this spirit of this little girl, and helped me to help the little girl leave.
Well, whenever we do investigations, teaching paranormal investigations here, if you're going to, we tell people, if you're going to address someone of that era, be respectful, because first of all, you're coming into what they believe is their house. Second, it was a more genteel era. I mean, before the 1960s, people were actually polite.
A spirit of a lady from the 1800s that lived on an orchard in Pekin, Illinois, and the house that the people built was right where that orchard was. But this woman was upset with the wife in the house because she spends too much time putting on that paint on her face, not listening to her husband. Why doesn't she get up and fix him breakfast in the morning and have it on the table when he comes in before he goes to work? And why doesn't she do this and why doesn't she do that? She was really upset that this woman wasn't taking care of her husband the way she should, and spent way too much time prettying herself up in front of the mirror. It was really funny.
You know, this is remarkable because Bob is from the Midwest, from the heartland, and yet what he is saying is so similar to the experiences that we have. For example, the renovation. When he said whenever there was a renovation, there's more activity because you've upset. That's exactly what we find here. You know, when we renovated our ghost house here in Gettysburg, and a number of other places in Gettysburg, Her Tavern, Cashtown, and when they were renovating, that's when you pick up all the stories of the activity that's going on. Some of it is, you know, not real pleasant because people have been on ladders and the ladders start shaking, things like that. So it's interesting to see how common these events and experiences are, no matter where you go.
I've had people live in a house for 7-8 years and nothing ever happened. So it'll make them think there was a ghost there. And then suddenly one day the wife says, "Hon, why don't we just knock that wall down?" And they start knocking the wall down, and all of a sudden tools are disappearing. They're getting woke up in the middle of the night, and the kids can't sleep in their room, and there's footsteps and stomping.
So it's common.
Happened in our house, too.
Yeah, things happen all over the place that are common.
Mark has a ghost down in his Ghost of Fredericksburg walking tour headquarters that does not like me very much. We got to be pretty good friends. I was down there one day before we were doing an investigation and walked up the stairs, and she's standing in this room. So I said hi to her. A little bit later, she comes back in the room where I am with Carol, Mark's wife, and Katie, his daughter, and they said, "You know what, there's a woman in here." Or they didn't tell me it was a woman. They said, there's somebody in here. We want to find out about them. So she told me that she lived there for just a little while when she was 15, and that her uncle actually owned the place at the time. And I asked her why she lived there, and it was because she got pregnant, and she had to move away where nobody saw her and have the baby. So we go back in with everybody else at the investigation, and I tell them my findings. So you can talk to this woman here. This is her name, and the reason she's here is because she had a baby out of wedlock. Well, she got so mad at me, she stormed out of there. We never heard from her for the rest of the night.
Because you told on her.
Because I told on her. And I didn't think about it that. She was born in the late 1700s, I believe. And what I did was very improper.
What she did was very improper. And it's funny that you mentioned that because I just recently did a home in Peoria that was built in 1901. And it was built next to Bradley University, which was there from like the late 1800s it was built. And a young girl had been sent to live with her aunt and uncle to go to school. And what happened was the uncle took a shine to her. And whenever the aunt was gone, he would come in and force himself upon her. And she became pregnant. But what she did was she took a razor to her wrist and stayed because at that time, of course, she believed if God, God is going to condemn me to hell because I committed suicide. So that was another one I had to convince that God wasn't going to condemn her to hell for being sick.
Do you think that the world has more evil entities in it now, or evil activity?
We have more crimes against children now than we've ever had. It's a common thing. I can remember back when if someone did something horrible to a child, oh my God, this was a horrible thing, and everybody was talking, but now it's a daily thing. You read about it in the paper constantly. Even their own mothers and fathers are doing this. People are killing people left and right for no apparent reason. The government is falling apart. Nobody has faith in their own government anymore. the wars across the seas, you know, and I know there are Christians that read the Bible and believe in, if you read a certain part of the Bible, that it's talking about the end of the world. And anybody that believes in Sodom and Gomorrah will look at the world today and realize we're far beyond that, you know, and of course we have the internet to thank for a lot of these problems. You know, you have these sexual predators on the internet now that are getting the confidence of these children and taking advantage of them and sometimes killing them. And mothers and fathers losing their temper and killing their kids. This is a daily thing now. So, yeah, I definitely think we have more of it today than ever before.
Well, if we don't watch the time, I could be talking to you all night long. You're so interesting, Rob. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. This is great.
Will you come back?
Anytime.
That's wonderful.
Super.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you to our listeners. Please write us with any questions you have at Laine@ghosttalkers.net. And remember to visit us again. Thank you, and rest in peace.